And welcome back to Culture Crossroads. As everyone knows, and I'm not sure if you've heard, there is an election coming up. There are many leaders to vote for, but there are many initiatives and amendments and ballot measures to vote for all across the country. And what's incredible is that many progressive ballot measures are finding their way into what you would think would be fairly conservative, stalwart states. South Dakota is not an exception. RL21 on the ballot. Here to discuss that with us is author, speaker, all-around freedom advocate, and I stress, not an activist, but freedom advocate, Amanda Radke. Thank you for giving us a little bit of your time. Let's get right into it. Tell us first, what is RL21? Why does it need to be defeated?
Well, I know your audience is nationwide, and I think it's really important for people to know that what's happening in South Dakota with RL21 is the exact same playbook that's happening across the country when it comes to land grabs of forcing wind and solar and hydro and carbon projects onto land of people who don't want to participate in these Green New Deal initiatives. So what's happening in South Dakota? Referred Law 21 is a carbon pipeline bill that basically greases the wheels for one private, out-of-state, foreign-backed entity to come into the state of South Dakota and force its way onto land where people do not want it. And what's really egregious about this bill that we'll be voting on in South Dakota is in order to rubber stamp this project, this bill actually takes away all local governance. So the abilities for county commissioners, 300 plus county commissioners that were elected to represent our South Dakota communities, no longer have a say in setbacks and ordinances on this project.
Doesn't that fly in the face of states' rights?
One would think, freedom-loving South Dakota, where under God the people rule, all of a sudden now we're bending a knee to the federal government, we're consolidating power to the state level, and we the people are simply saying, we believe governance is best made closest to home by neighbors and people that are actually invested in their communities. And so what people don't realize is this company, Summit Carbon Solutions, not only came into the state of South Dakota and condemned over 100 landowners, but they also sued individual counties for their ordinances and their setbacks. And so if RL21 goes through, all of those ordinances and setbacks go away, and all the decision-making power is consolidated to just 3 people at the Public Utilities Commission. That Public Utilities Commission has said repeatedly, we want to hear from the counties. We want their input. But Summit Carbon Solutions is saying, no way, no how. We want this project pushed forward, and we don't want any pushback from those local communities. And that's what RL21 is.
Walk us through kind of a concentric circle ripple effect. What happens if this is allowed to pass? How does that then affect the immediate, landowners, ranchers, farmers? And then what are the effects that might be felt outside the state of South Dakota? I think one of the things we're coming to realize is how dependent we, the people, are on government and corporations that have taken over and pushed out a lot of our ability to live for ourselves and be self-reliant. But how does that ripple start, and where does it end up if this measure passes?
Sure. So I believe South Dakota is the canary in the coal mine for what's to come. And RL21 would set a very dangerous precedent that you often hear red state conservative governors talking about economic development, value-added agriculture, and boosting the tax base. But really what they're not saying is they're doing all of these initiatives at the expense of the people who already call this place home. You're going to see things coming out like the Sustains Act on a federal level that really emphasizes public-private partnerships. So what you're going to see is more and more corporate entities shaping the way this country looks. And we, the people in South Dakota, are saying, now, wait a minute. We're the ones that have planted roots here. We're the ones that are building our businesses here and raising our families here. And now we're paying the ultimate price through our tax dollars with our land being stripped away from us in order to push these Green New Deal projects forward. It is insane. And so a lot of people don't know, the Biden administration just guaranteed a $1.46 billion with a B loan to GEVO, which is a sustainable aviation fuel company to be built in the state of South Dakota to attach to this carbon pipeline. The state of South Dakota also gave them a $15 million gift to get off the ground. Our government is literally choosing winners and losers in business using our tax dollars. So we have a government that's out of control, that spends way too much of our hard-earned money while really ignoring the pleas of our veterans, our homeless, the people impacted in the wakes of flooding and hurricanes. It is absolutely a government that's off the rails. And we, the people of South Dakota, are working on slowing them down and righting the ship.
When we talk about land grab with this RL21 and Summit Carbon Solutions, explain a little bit as to how that would work. I know one of the pieces one of the little presents hidden in this is that, and again, tell me if I've got this incorrect. They want to run their pipeline across everybody's land, so they're going to seize the land they need to do it. It's going to sequester carbon in a pipe for reasons, and then you can't use the land within a certain proximity of the pipeline. However, you still get to pay your property taxes on that land, even though it's been seized from you. And of course, then problems from there. Is that is that a little bit of what this bill or this measure would do?
I mean, absolutely. We, the landowners, are taking all the risk. I mean, I'm a mother of 4. This pipeline could go within a mile of my house. If this pipeline ruptures, and it's not your everyday oil pipeline, this isn't a natural gas pipeline, this is compressed CO2, that if it leaks or if it ruptures, it's odorless, it's colorless. This is the most pure carbon you can create on the market. And you die, people die. And so we don't understand the plume studies, or we don't know how far and wide this would spread. We don't know the impact, but we do know that this is a man-made deal. There are risks involved with it. So the risk to human life, to wildlife, to our water aquifers is immense. It absolutely erodes that local control, that community part that makes South Dakota great. And it really opens the door to eminent domain abuse in the future. Now, I got to say, it's not all doom and gloom here in South Dakota, because this is just one fight of many fights. This has been a 3.5-year battle. But in 2024, the landowners have stacked up a whole bunch of victories. And I think it's a great message to the rest of the country that when you band together and you lock arms with your neighbors, you can get great things done. So a few things happened. After this RL21 was pushed out of the legislature and the governor signed it to become law, 500 unpaid volunteer citizens got together, collected enough signatures to get this bill as a referendum on the ballot. We have a referendum process in South Dakota where we, the people, can challenge any bill coming into law. So we needed 17,500 signatures to get it on the ballot. We collected a whopping 38,000 signatures in just 90 short days. After that, the primary happened. We voted out 11 of the legislators that voted for this bill and replaced them with really good, strong conservatives who will stand beside the Constitution. They're calling it an avalanche, a hurricane in the Capitol, because we overturned the power structure on the rhinos that were making these decisions and bending over backwards for these corporate entities. So we had a huge decision made in the primary election. And then to top it all off, the South Dakota Supreme Court ruled in a unanimous ruling this summer that Summit Carbon Solutions had absolutely no right to invasively survey and go onto people's land and condemn properties because they had failed to prove that they were a common carrier or a commodity. And in fact, Summit Carbon Solutions challenged that unanimous ruling, and the Supreme Court said once again, no, you're denied. You have not proven that you're a common carrier. And so that's significant, because then it isn't treated like a natural gas or an oil pipeline. They do not have the right for eminent domain. They do not have the right to go onto people's property. And this company has. They have, in the instance of my friend Jared Bosley, they walked into his house, his wife was in the shower and the agents are walking in their house calling out. They went into the private shed. They walked through the yard. Later, they went and brought their big, heavy equipment and they drove over cornfields and soybeans. They bore a 90-foot hole into the ground and they wanted to put all of that sludge into the ditch. Now, even this fall, as Jared is harvesting that field, that is an absolute dead spot where they bored a hole. And the Supreme Court vindicated what we've said all along, is that this private company should not have access to our land if we say no, thank you. And so at its base, RL21 is unconstitutional. It goes against our state constitution. It crams a bunch of topics into one in like a DC style bill where it's a lot of pork that they're cramming in to get what they want. But this is really a bill of sale. And our message to everyone, including our politicians and Summit Carbon Solutions, is we may be open for business in South Dakota, but we are not for sale. And we will not let go of our private property rights and our local governance without a fight.
That is very good news that you're stacking up victories, particularly legal precedents. Those are all things that unfortunately you're probably going to have to come back to those, because I would think that even if RL21 goes down, which if the past momentum of the things you just laid out carries through in a couple of days here at the ballot box, hopefully it would go down. But that doesn't mean you're not up against some still serious opposition. First of all, just the ad buys and the messaging. These companies are spending millions of dollars to counteract your efforts. Talk a little bit about some of the headwinds you're facing in defeating RL21 from a messaging standpoint.
It's absolutely a David and Goliath story. On our side, it is donations that have come from 700 plus families and local farmers and ranchers, $10 and $20 at a time. Our most significant fundraiser was a pie auction. We sold pies and raised $10,000. Total, we've raised about $200,000 for our fight. On the other side, 7 major entities, basically the ethanol companies that would profit from this boondoggle of using 45Q tax credits to enrich themselves by tying into this carbon pipeline project. 7 major entities have donated $2.6 million to beat us. They're spending $10,000 a day calling us liars, running their TV campaign ads, saying that they are for the farmers. But what they're not saying is it's for a very few farmers, the very elite farmers that will get to line their pockets with our tax dollars while trampling on their neighbors and other farmers in the communities that say, this is not right. This is not the South Dakota way.
Briefly, win or lose, what happens next? Particularly if RL21 goes down, is this the last you'll hear from them, or do you expect them to keep coming back like the cockroaches that never die?
You know, after 3.5 years, one would think that Summit Carbon Solutions would get the message that they are not welcome here, that we do not do business with bad actors and bullies. They've had many strikes now against them that have shown and indicated in every way that this project is not going to go through. However, they keep crawling back. They keep doing their worst. My message to them is to bring it on, because we're not going anywhere. We'll get up the day after the election, win, lose, or draw, and we'll be ready for the next battle. The next battle will be bolstering up our private property rights, making eminent domain reform on the state level, really protecting the people. This is the hill that our people, the good people in South Dakota, are saying, not here, not now, not at this time, because we're fighting for our kids, our grandkids, and generations to come. And so my final message to everyone watching is, you may think that you're a small voice. You may think you don't have much money or much power or much political pull, but man, we've sure gotten a lot done without those resources, just by standing up, locking arms together, and speaking the truth. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
All right, last 40 seconds here. Enough time to make a plea. Those people who are not sure, maybe they're not going out to vote, or they hadn't planned on it. What's a plea to some of those people in South Dakota that you might need their vote? Give that plea, and then also, when you're done, make sure that people know where they can follow up with you. Sure.
My plea to South Dakotans is to please vote no on RL21. It is not a landowner bill of rights. It is a bill of sale for a carbon pipeline company on your dollar, on your taxpayer dollar. It is bending the knee to the federal government's Green New Deal. This is not the South Dakota way. There is much optimism ahead, but we've got to stand up for what is right. And what is right is to vote no on RL21. Folks can learn more at sdnotforsale.com, and they can also follow my messaging at amandaradke.com.
Amanda Radke, thank you very much for your time. We will be right back at Culture Crossroads. We have a report on Amendment 4 in Florida. So the hits just keep on coming here. Stick around. We'll be right back.